Hi, welcome to Birthing at Home, a podcast. I'm Elsie, your host. I'm a home birth mum of 2 little boys. I'm a mental health nurse, a home birth advocate broadly, but also more specifically in the state of Victoria, and I'm an ex-student midwife. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of the land I'm recording on in Melbourne, Australia. I would also like to acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have been birthing at home on country for tens of thousands of years prior to the British invasion, and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded.
Episode 27 is shared by Nathalie, mum to 2 little boys from Newcastle, and she's also the founder of the Homebirth Newcastle group. Nathalie shares her hospital birth journey with Isaac in 2020, which she assumed would be a positive experience. However, after being given a gestational diabetes diagnosis, she ended up being kicked out of the midwifery group practice and into disjointed care. At around 25 weeks into Nathalie's second pregnancy with Remy, with the support of her doula, she chose to seek out a private midwife and plan a home birth with individualized and woman-centered care that could better support her with her anxiety and any concerns about gestational diabetes. This story exemplifies how different the birth culture in Australia could be if the maternity system that almost 99% of women enter was able to provide truly woman-centered care and individualized care. And finally, if you're enjoying the podcast or you enjoy this episode, please rate or review it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really, really helps people to find the podcast and listen, because that's the whole point of these stories, so that they can be shared and other women can learn and be inspired too. Enjoy. Welcome, Nathalie, to Birthing at Home, a podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Of course. We were just catching up about how you have 2 little boys, and I have 2 little boys as well.
Yeah. I've got Isaac, who's 3, and Remy, who just turned 14 months.
Yeah, amazing.
Yes.
And you're in Newcastle.
Yes, I live in Newcastle with my husband, and I had Isaac, my firstborn, in hospital in 2020, and then I had Remy at home at the end of 2022.
Yeah, okay. And I guess we're also just catching up about how you started Homebirth Newcastle. Is that what you guys call it, Homebirth Newcastle?
Yes. Well, I just sort of had all these, it felt like serendipitous meetings with people just out and about who just happened to have had home births, and then I just thought, wouldn't it be great if there was a way to bring them all together? And I realised there was no group locally, and I thought, maybe I'll just have to start it myself. And so I did that in June and started it, and that was really nice because there's only a handful of private midwives in our area. Like it's not like you had to have a private midwife or anything, but it means that, a lot of us did have the same midwife. And so that's nice, bonding over that. And lots of shared experiences. And so I've just got
you started it. Yeah. Did you start it in June 2023? Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it was really weird. I had this, I was sitting at my local coffee shop, and this guy saw me with my baby and started asking how old he was, and then saying that he had a baby at a similar age. And I don't know why I did, but I just said, I asked where his baby was born, and he said, actually at home. And then he started telling this whole story, and we found out that we both had, his wife had the same midwife as me.
What?
And then so I just connected with her, and I just said, I really need to get all of us together, and that's the day I decided to do it.
Yeah. Actually, I went to because I have made some home birth shirts to try and support the podcast. The shirts say Home Birth Mama, and the ones you say Born at Home. But I went to the printing place yesterday because I had to ask them some questions, and one of the product
guys came out and he was like helping me, and he was like, oh, actually my wife had an accidental home birth. And I was like, that's crazy. And of course his he was like, oh, thank God that the ambulance came, because like who would have delivered it? And inside I was thinking, your wife, she would have delivered it. Like it would have been okay. But I just thought, I wonder how many people actually, we see it in the stats that like it's less than 1% or something.
I find that so hard to believe now, because I have made so many connections online and in person with all these people who've had home births that now when I hear someone had a birth in hospital, I'm like, oh, really? Like it feels like that's the weird thing now, because I'm just so, it's just who you talk to, isn't it? But I guess we are the minority.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully that'll change though.
Hopefully. I think, like I feel like maybe I've mentioned this before, but Victoria is getting another 3 publicly funded home birth programs.
Yeah,
like there's
that's
already
so great.
2 was already 1, and then now another 2 have started like this month. So like that should like increase the rate. Absolutely. I'm not sure if you can hear, I hope not, but my children are screaming in the background.
No, I can't hear anything. No.
Okay.
I'm lucky mine are outside at the moment. So. We do have the publicly funded one here in Newcastle, but I'm not eligible for it. I'll talk about. So
do you want to, I guess, like going way back then before Isaac even, like when did you like learn about birthing your babies, that you could birth your babies at home? Was that after Isaac or? Yeah,
like when I was pregnant with Isaac, a friend was pregnant at the same time having her third, and she was having she decided late on to have a home birth because her babies come quite quickly. And she'd been with Belmont, like that's our publicly funded one, for all 3 births, but they can do home or birthing centre, and she had decided to have the third one at home. And I just remember thinking, oh, okay, well, I don't think I'd be brave enough to do that. Like that's the only thought I had. Like I thought it was cool, but I didn't know much about home birth when I was pregnant with Isaac. It's not something I would have considered when I was pregnant with Isaac. Because I assumed it would be a positive experience in the hospital, but it wasn't.
Wow.
So, that's what got me interested in it, I suppose. I think I always had this vision of birthing, like having physiological births, and because my mum had all 3 of us relatively easily. I think the first that my eldest brother, she did have an epidural and had a long labour for him, but then the next 2 she said very quick. Like she wasn't like super positive about birth, but she's quite a natural sort of person, and she had relatively good experiences with birth, but she doesn't love birth like the way I do. But I think I just had a vision, I'll probably have similar births to her.
Why not?
So I was with the group practice, not the home birth one, but our local hospital, the John Hunter, has a group, midwifery group practice where you birth at the birth centre at John Hunter. And that's supposed to be the, lower intervention sort of thing, like as you know about group practice. So that's what I was signed up for with Isaac. But I think due to COVID, possibly.
Of course.
I don't know. I really hadn't met anybody. I just was seeing my GP a bit, and I think I did a little bit of shared care with her, and like while I was waiting to get in, see if I got into this group practice. And I got a call to say, you got in. But then I just didn't hear from anyone for ages. And then I finally heard from this midwife. I must have been, I don't know, I think I must have been getting up close to 25 weeks or something like that. I had seen some midwives at our local centre. There's different, centres where you can see the midwives, so you don't have to go into the hospital. So I had seen a couple of random midwives there. I hadn't found it very good. I didn't really click with them very well. And so I heard I got into this program, thought, great, that's when it's all going to go right, and I'm going to get proper care and all that.
Yeah.
And I met this midwife once. She seemed great. And then I had my glucose tolerance test.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I never thought I would have gestational diabetes.
Yeah.
Like, I have no risk factors for it. And then, I had it. Basically, my fasting was 5.1, which is literally the lowest you can be diagnosed. And then, like, with the drink, I was 6.0 for both with the drink, so that's way below.
Yeah.
So I was sort of like, oh, that doesn't seem very serious. But straight away I was told, no more group practice. And then I just had very disjointed care through the John Hunter, and you see like an obstetric registrar, but it's never the same one.
Yeah,
and you sit there waiting for like 2 hours for your appointment, for your 5-minute appointment. And then also I like kept dropping off their list, and then there was like no appointment made for me. And I went for weeks where no appointment was coming up, and then I'd call them and they'd like have no record of me and stuff. So
what? Oh my gosh.
And I don't know that they might have said, oh, COVID or so, I don't know what, but basically when I was seeing them, it was all, you're high risk because of this, even though it was only ever my fasting that was just above, and no matter what I ate, I never went over.
Yeah.
I was eating really healthy, but then I'd experiment sometimes, have something that should send me over, and it didn't. So it showed it was not a problem with my eating.
Yeah.
I wasn't being affected by what I ate. It was just, I don't know. That's actually what my fasting is. So whether I'm pregnant or not, my fasting always sits about 5.1.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's gestational diabetes. I think it's just me.
Yeah. Just my body doing what it's
and when you're not pregnant, they're not worried about that number. But when you are pregnant, they are.
Yeah, so inconsistent. And I've been wanting to do this, but I'm so curious. Like, you know, you said that the cutoff was 5.1, but you know, I've also shared stories and listened to stories where, like, you know, you go to a different hospital or you go to a different part of like the state or the city or whatever, and it's like a different.
Yeah, sometimes it's 5.5. So in that case, I would have still been with the group practice. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And like, what was your like partner's experience like through this? Like, where I guess you don't really know what you don't know, I guess, hey?
Yeah. As in my husband?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was just like, he thought it was pretty silly. And he didn't want me to go on the insulin. Yeah. But because I didn't know a lot, like I was pretty, like I looked up Lily Nichols, who is a great forward-thinking dietitian who specialises in gestational diabetes and eating a moderately low-carb diet rather than just doing this high-carb like the hospital suggests and using insulin or, she basically said it's very outdated what they're doing and that she does more modern stuff, and there's people who are more forward-thinking. Cocoon by Naomi, if you know her, she's a postpartum doula, and she has launched a course as well on that. She didn't have a course at the time, but I was following her, and I was learning from her resources that she was posting as well, and realizing. So I was aware, but I wasn't on that front foot where, I don't know, I guess I was still a little bit influenced, like, oh, you know, I don't want to do the wrong thing for my baby. So I was listening to them as well, but then I was doing my own research as well and trying to just, it was just, and it was COVID and it was locked down and it was just very overwhelming. In the end, I did agree to go on insulin just for the fasting, just like the minimum dose for fasting towards the end of the pregnancy.
Okay.
And, they really pressured me into that, I felt. And then to find out how to actually inject it, they just sent me a YouTube video. And that was it.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
Yeah. And I was just so overwhelmed and scared and confused. And in the end, I got, like, if you're fasting still over 5.1 after you do the minimum dose, they tell you to put it up by 2, and they don't know anything else about you. This is all just over the phone.
Wow.
And I did that, and then I ended up getting, like, a hypo and, like shaking and getting, like, cold sweat in the night and all this, because I shouldn't have been on it, really, I don't think.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's atrocious. And so by being on, having this label now of gestational diabetes, and then also being like an insulin-controlled.
Yeah, they called me an insulin-dependent
oh my God.
diabetic.
Oh, my God.
And I was like, I don't think I am diabetic. Like, it's just not acting in that way. And then in the end I said, this is dangerous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a private endocrinologist. And she did go along the same lines, but at least she would listen to me a bit more, and she was a bit more like, yeah, you probably don't need to put it up if it's 5.1, but if it's going above that and it's for a few days in a row, then we might think about putting it up. And in the end, I just stayed on the minimum dose just to keep it around 5.
Yeah. Did all of this then influence, like, the pressure or the recommendations to have scans and induction and that classic?
So I had all that. He was measuring 50th percentile for everything.
Yeah.
So there's nothing they could say. They couldn't say he's too small or he's too big. Everything was just looking perfect to them, and all my numbers were good. But because of that, insulin-dependent diabetic label, even though I was having a very healthy pregnancy, they wanted me to be induced at 38 weeks. Yeah. But I knew that wasn't right. So I just, it was very stressful every time I went in. Like, you felt like you're having to put up a fight for every appointment. Every appointment, there was no point, like, they weren't really looking after me. All they were doing was saying, okay, when can we book you in, basically? Yeah. And then I'd have to say, look at my scans, look at my numbers, like, I don't, and they said it's a blanket rule. That's the term they used. So I was very angry. I felt so angry at the whole system. I felt like I was just a number, that I was being treated, like the most severe case, when I was the most mild case, if I even had this thing. Yeah. So
they see it in black and white, and they don't see, like, all of the shades in between the black and white. Yeah. It's not, like, individualized in that way. That's terrible. That's, like, scary that they have.
It was, and I felt, I just felt like I needed to fight, and I needed to do something differently. So I knew, like, but it was COVID and everything. Like, I had no other care. I didn't know really about private midwives. I just felt like I had no options.
Yeah. And so how did you find out about this hospital pathway? Was it that you went to the GP and the GP said left, right, private, public, or did you just have like this idea?
Yeah, and she even crossed out Belmont, the midwifery group practice.
Huh.
And she, like, had always been a good GP to me. Like, I think she's good, but then when it comes to birth, she's just so conservative. She put a big X through that, and she goes, oh, you won't want to do that one. And I didn't even question it at the time because I didn't know anything about it. I just was like, oh, okay, well, I'll do the John Hunter one.
That's terrible.
Yeah, but that's how
you
many
got on
GPs
this.
are.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I wrote an email quite a few weeks ago to the whatever college of GPs, and I didn't expect a reply, and I still haven't received a reply. But like, I just don't like the GPs are like, they're the gatekeepers for so many women's, healthcare choices. And if you're automatically crossing things off women's list, the women don't even know what's on the list.
Exactly. And this doctor, I went to her at 6 weeks, and I didn't really care for a checkup for myself. It was only for my son. But they sort of like, oh, no, we booked both of you in. And then she just spent my appointment marveling at the fact that, oh, you had had him at home. And then she's like, in a pool. I've never heard of a pool. What did it look like? Can you show me a picture? And like,
What?
yeah, she had never didn't know anything about it. And she does shared care.
Oh no.
And I like her for all the actual medical problems when it comes to birth. Like, it's heartbreaking. It's just that's just standard.
Wow. And so with Isaac, then did you eventually succumm to having an induction, or you?
No, well, sort of. So I agreed with. There was one. Because I saw a different person every time.
Yeah.
And one of the obstetricians, she was actually quite nice, and she said, okay, like, I'm taking into account what you're saying, and I think 39 and 5 would be appropriate. And we settled on that. Looking back, it's like, of course I didn't need to do that. But the good thing is my waters broke at 39 and 3.
Yeah, nice.
So, yeah, waters broke, and then, but looking back, you know, I did everything how I definitely shouldn't have, even though I thought I knew so much and I thought I was so ahead of all the things they were trying to do to me. I still called the hospital straight away, like, oh, my waters are broken. And they're like, oh, you should come in, like, as soon as you can. And, like, there was no reason to. Like, it was clear. It was more of a trickle, really. And, I felt fine, and after about half an hour I was getting really mild contractions, and they're like, oh, come in. So I went in, and then actually I said to them on the phone, I'll only come in if you promise that if everything's fine I can go home to labour, because that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I went, and they said, yeah, of course, why, if everything's fine, of course you can go home. I went in, everything was great, no issues. And then they went, oh, you got gestational diabetes, though. We'll have to get the obstetrician to sign off on you.
God.
And then, like, I heard someone in the corridor go, who let her go this long? And I was just like, actually, it was an obstetrician that I saw, like, just last week. And also, that's ridiculous, but
my God.
Yeah, and we sat in the room for ages, and I think this is already setting me up for a bad labour.
Yeah.
And I was in the room for ages, and I said to the midwife, because I'd heard on Australian Birth Stories that you can sign a waiver to leave.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have just walked out, really, but I didn't know that. But I said, can I sign something so I can go and labour at home now, because I just don't feel that's a reason for me to be here.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, that's fine. We think that's fine. So just sign it. And the midwives agreed that I would be totally fine to go home. So I did stay at home for a bit.
Yeah.
But the whole time I was at home, I think I felt like naughty.
Yeah, like you're in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, or I was putting my baby at risk, or I was reckless, or, that kind of thing. And then I was finding the labour quite painful. A lot of it was in my back, and I was starting to think, oh, maybe the baby's coming, and, I really should get to the hospital. So I only laboured at home for a few hours.
Yeah.
And, I was nowhere near. Like, I ended up from waters breaking to having him, it was 30 hours.
Wow.
So, I mean, like, obviously we don't need to go through the whole birth, but I was I didn't cope well with it at all, and I had morphine, I think, or if that's what they call it, where they inject it, like, locally in the leg.
Yeah.
And that actually brought on, like, a panic attack for me, and took me back to a time that I was in hospital with heart things, because it made me feel like my heart was stopping, and I'd had a heart arrhythmia before. And, so I was having all this anxiety, and I felt like I was dying, and then I had...
Awesome. So really great for birthing baby.
Yeah, so, and the midwives, some were nice, but some weren't so nice, and so it was a mixed bag, and I met a lot of midwives over the time, and then they eventually augmented it because of the broken waters, and then I had an epidural, but it only worked on one side, so then I was, like, stuck on the bed with one side in agony, and then one side I couldn't feel, so I couldn't move around. So it felt like torture. And then I pushed for 2.5 hours, and they wouldn't let me take a break. Even though I said, can I just have one break? They wouldn't let me. I don't really know why.
Yeah.
And then I ended up having an episiotomy and forceps delivery.
Yeah.
So,
wow,
that
Nathalie,
sort of
that's
just
like intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
and then
my
I
gosh.
apparently got postpartum preeclampsia as well.
I just, like, there's so many problems in this story, but like I really hate gestational diabetes.
Yeah, well, same.
Like so much. Because,
but without it, I don't think I would have had a home birth second time around. So
yeah, I mean that's true.
Some positive.
That's you know, that is true. Like that is just how life works, and you know you can use them as like lessons, I guess. But how terrible, because like what I find sad about these stories that I hear that are often, you know, before somebody learns about home birth, is that there are so many women out there who have no idea that home birth exists and just think that this is just how it is and just block it out because it was traumatic. Block it out. That's just how it is. There's no other option. I would have died. My baby would have died. Everybody would have died.
See, I never thought any of that though.
Just so sad.
I didn't. I think I haven't told you the worst bit. Straight after he was born, a lady that was she was a very young woman, and I would say like early 20s.
Yeah.
I feel that maybe she was doing some sort of training and she was trying to put a cannula in my arm at some point. So I have no idea. She couldn't get it in, and I have no idea who she was, but she was in and out a few times, of no relevance to me really. But at the end, when he was born and he was on my chest, she came in and goes, "Oh, so she finally got her shit together." And
no.
Yeah, and actually I hear that phrase in my head, like that phrase is just stuck in my head so badly. But actually now I'm saying it, I've realised that I hadn't thought about it for a long time. So I think...
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Thank you for sharing, though. Like,
I think since... I've written about it on Instagram, and I sent for the birth trauma inquiry. Even though I don't think I had the worst birth in the world compared to a lot. I specifically mentioned that as something that really shouldn't have happened. Like, I did have good care, some of it. I did have some midwives that I thought, why did you say that? Like, counterproductive old school midwives. So I didn't want to say that my care wasn't good, because some was, some wasn't, but the system sucks, basically. But this lady sucked, whoever she was. I wish I knew who she was so I could, put in a complaint, but I didn't at the time, and now I wouldn't have any way to identify her. Yeah.
Wow. So it's like literally... no surprise. Well, I mean, it is a bit of a surprise, but I can understand 100% why you would choose a home birth.
But I didn't have home birth in my mind already. As soon as I'd given birth to Isaac, the first thing I thought, or when I was still in hospital with him, I thought, next birth, everything's going to be different. I just had that thought. But I never considered home birth. My plan was, I'm going to figure out a way to have my fasting 5 on the day of the gestational diabetes test, because I know that sometimes my fasting is 5. Or I'll prick my finger before I go and make sure it's a good day or whatever for the test, and I'll go with the group practice. That was my plan. So when I got pregnant with Remy, it was nearly... there's nearly 2.5 years age gap between them. But when I got pregnant with Remy, the first thing I thought was, I'm going to get in early to the endocrinologist, get on the front foot and tell her, I'm pregnant. I want to figure out a way to figure out what is going on with these blood sugars. So I wore a CGM, the continuous glucose monitor. And just to look. And what I found was I was having a lot of lows. There's a lot of times where I was in the 3s with my blood sugar. But upon waking, I spiked to that sort of 5.1. But I had healthy low to sometimes I was thinking, is it too low blood sugar throughout the day? And I showed her the graphs and everything, and all she said was, "How did you get one of those?" And I was like, oh, no, here we go again. It's this whole, like, gatekeeping sort of, I know better than you. And maybe, you know better about some things, but when it comes to this and my body and my blood sugar, I know better than you because I'm tracking it.
Yeah.
I know what's going on.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, well, we can see that your fasting's around that same number as last time, so I can diagnose you now if you want.
What?
And I'm like, no, I'm coming in here.
That doesn't make sense. Oh,
I'm coming in here to show you that I don't have high blood sugar, that it's just this one peak in the morning and then it goes down again. And I'm coming here to say, is there a way we can get around this gestational diabetes thing and that I can just go with the group practice?
Yeah.
And she was all like, I think you should have a fasting blood test and I can diagnose you early and then you can start, you know, getting subsidies on the diabetes stuff early. And I was like, I was just so depressed.
Yeah.
Just left that appointment in tears thinking, I'm trapped in the system again.
Yeah.
But the main difference this time was that I had a doula.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so Eleanor Lambert, I actually knew her growing up and stuff, so I already had a bit of a relationship with her and I loved her, like, style of, like, she likes science but she also likes physiological birth, and she's a women's health physio as well. Cool. So she's just got a really good balance of being logical but also listening to the woman and her, you know, because she knows herself best. So I had her. So the good thing was I'd already engaged her, so I could talk through things with her, like say I went to this appointment, I'm devastated, and, you know, she would help talk it through with me and say, okay, you know, it's just one appointment, you know, you're not going to go through the same thing as last time, we're going to make sure it's different.
And so this whole time you're still, like, home birth is not on your mind?
No, not on my radar, really. It's just not something. I just thought, I never really thought about getting a private midwife, and I just wasn't on my radar, I would say. But I still wanted a physiological birth with the midwifery group and Eleanor as my doula. That was my plan. And then 12-week scan, my baby had increased nuchal translucency.
Okay.
Which means it was high risk for Down syndrome and all the chromosomal things, genetic conditions, all that. But we were given a 1 in 60 chance of Down syndrome. And I did the NIPT, and that showed low risk for everything.
Okay.
So I guess then I'm thinking, another complication to this pregnancy. But the John Hunter did a really thorough 16-week scan, said we can't find anything else amiss. Your NIPT is low risk, so we're just going to put you back into low risk care now. But meanwhile, I'm a nervous wreck thinking, is there something going on with my baby's health that I don't know about? What does this mean? Like, it still stresses me that why was that, you know?
Well, it builds up this, like, you know, this self-talk that's like, something's wrong, something's happening, I can't trust my body, you know, and like you said with the Isaacs, like the pregnancy with Isaac, you know, they weren't saying, you know, you were able to push back a little bit, but that constant, you know, pressure, I guess, that's put upon you each time, it makes you question yourself. Like, I think most of us are like that.
Isaac.
Hi, Isaac. Hello, you can't see me. I'm just like a voice.
Yes.
So I think, like,
Mummy's just talking.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I don't see you.
Yeah, he says, I don't see you.
Should I turn my camera on quickly? Look. Can you see me now?
A little bit blurry.
A little bit blurry, yeah. So with what's the accuracy of the NIPT, do you know?
99%, I think, for... But this increased nuchal translucency, it can mean I might just move out of there.
Yeah, no, that's
space.
okay.
Yeah, it can mean lots of things. So I guess I was still scared that it was, could be something more. But they said, as far as they were concerned, not to worry about it.
Okay, yeah.
So I decided, I had that thorough scan at 16 weeks at the John Hunter, and after that, in the maternal fetal medicine unit, and after that, I said to my husband, I'm never coming back to the John Hunter for the rest of my pregnancy.
Yeah, wow.
Because I felt so traumatised by the place.
Yeah.
And when I went there, all I could think about was, all the horrible things that had happened there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I said, I'm never coming back here. So I still had that plan to go with the Hunter midwifery group practice.
Yeah.
But then, I met one of the midwives and I started seeing her. And then I saw her a few times. She came to my house for appointments, which was great. And I thought, yeah, this should be all right. I liked her. I didn't, love her, but I thought, yeah, she was younger and, I don't know, I hadn't formed a relationship with her yet, but she started saying, you need to do the early test to stay on this program.
Okay.
For gestational diabetes.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, it was around, I guess, towards 20 weeks that she kept, and she was texting me saying, have you done the test yet? I just need you to do this test. And I just went through this period of avoiding it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have this big chat and say, try and explain my point of view, but I thought, it just all felt too much like everything's a fight.
Yeah.
So my doula said, what about home birth? Have you considered that with a private midwife?
Yeah.
And that's when I went, that would be super cool, but there's just so many questions. I wasn't concerned about the safety because I knew a bit about home births and private midwives and how good the stats were around the outcomes and things.
Yeah.
It was just that I thought I just didn't know how to make it happen, and I thought it was too late in my pregnancy to make it happen.
Yeah.
But this midwife, Hayley from Nurturing Birth Hunter, she'd just gone out on her own, at starting her own business that year, so she still had some spots.
Oh, cool.
Well, she had actually 1 month left, and it was my month.
Yeah, wow.
So she connected. Yeah, Eleanor, who also went on to birth through Hayley, she connected me with Hayley, and we spoke on the phone for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And really connected, and even despite the cost, which really is not that bad if you consider all that they do. I just knew I had to do it, and surprisingly my husband came on board pretty quickly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean I feel like it's a big ask, all that money, and then also trusting that that's the right thing for the family and everything.
Yeah.
But he saw what I went through in the first birth, and he was traumatised from my first birth.
Yeah.
He didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I think he was terrified. I was so out of control and thinking I was going to die, and it was awful. Yeah. And I think he was just never wanted to see that happen again.
Yeah. 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 I guess you kind of probably develop a mindset of anything would be better than what just happened. How could it have been worse in a way?
Yeah. I think he did think, we should be able to cope with the pain, because he saw how I couldn't cope. But I was explaining to him I couldn't cope because I was scared of my environment.
Yeah.
And I was saying, if you feel safe, it won't be I won't be so.
Yeah.
If you're in the right frame of mind, it can cope with the pain a lot better.
Yeah, 100%.
Which turned out to be the case.
Yeah. And so, so how many weeks roughly did you link in with the private midwife?
I think it was, I have a feeling it was about 25 weeks again, something like that. So it was quite late.
Yeah.
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 So, and she would come to my house for appointments, and it was, it was lovely because I had my toddler there, so it was really good. She got him involved, and let him listen to the heartbeat and stuff like that, and she was just, it was more like a mental health, because I have a lot of sort of health anxiety.
Yeah.
So it was really nice just to do, we did like meditations and
Wow.
yeah, it was more just a wholesome, or like looking after the mother's mental health rather than just like, a couple of quick measurements and
wait here for 2 hours and then let's do your 20-minute appointment and then
exactly
go.
We would just chat like old friends and then just it was exactly what I needed.
And what was her I guess I want to say treatment, but like how did she treat this whole idea of like gestational diabetes?
Oh, she thought it was stupid. She was just like, I don't think you actually have gestational diabetes and all that. But in the end, right towards the end, I did notice my fasting was just going into the mid-5s, which is still not that high. But I said I do want to just check in with the endocrinologist, just make sure. I think just because I had a lot of anxiety around Remy's health. And he was measuring smaller, actually. He was measuring 30th percentile the whole pregnancy.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was sort of like, I don't know. I think I was still just a bit scared.
Yeah.
And I went and saw the endocrinologist and I said, like, she just thought the whole thing was insane. She couldn't believe I was having a home birth. She was saying that's not the right thing for me to do, all that.
Yeah.
And even the doctor that I went to get, like, the referral to Hayley, she was like, I don't think you need a referral for a private midwife. And then I was, like, explaining about the rebate and stuff. And then she's like, well, I really don't recommend it. I only recommend it for your, like, antenatal care because I think you're too much of a vulnerable person to have a home birth.
The terminology that comes out, like, are you kidding me?
Because I do have an anxiety disorder and I do have a lot of anxiety around health. But when it came to birth, I just...
Yeah, so you're vulnerable to things that make you anxious, like trauma. Yeah.
But she did the referral because I said, look, I'm only getting rebates for the care, so that's all you need to refer for. So she just put that in her referral. But in the end, I think it is kind of strange now looking back that I did engage the endocrinologist towards the end. Yeah. But I just felt Hayley was sort of like, oh, I don't know that you need to, but I felt that it was like the right thing, and she has to write like a management plan for the John Hunter. Yeah. So she was like, oh, I guess it's good. I can put that in there that, you're touching base with the endocrinologist. And, she did want me to go on insulin. Okay. And because I'd done it before, I thought, oh, I can go on that minimum dose again and get it to 5. But I only did it for a really short time, and then I forgot to do it one night, but my fasting was 5 anyway. And then I was like, nah, I'm not doing this anymore. So I just actually gave up on the whole thing. Yeah. So I did, sort of go back there, but then just decide no. Yeah.
And like how, like in the context of, all of this kind of unnecessary stress around gestational diabetes and whatnot, how was like your pregnancy otherwise? Like, especially having had such a traumatic experience with Isaac.
Well, It started, my pregnancy, we didn't plan Remy. We're probably going to wait another 6 months before trying. Yeah. So my pregnancy began with having COVID and finding out I was pregnant all in the same week. Yeah. And I got COVID again at like 20 weeks. Yeah. So there was a bit like, I think there was a fair bit of sickness going around when I was pregnant. So I remember getting sick a bit, and also my blood pressure tends to go up when I'm pregnant. Yeah. Just around that sort of cutoff point, just below that 140 on 90. It was sort of like, I don't know, high 130s on 80s or something. Yeah. So I was a bit stressed about my blood pressure because I had really high blood pressure after the birth of Isaac. Yeah. That stuck around for a bit. So I was a little bit nervous about blood pressure, but again, Hayley wasn't worried about that. And that's why we did the meditations and stuff, and she did find that helped. Yeah.
But again, like, especially with things like blood pressure, if you're going to an appointment and the doctor or the nurse is stressed about blood pressure, then you're going to get stressed about blood pressure. And then, like, what do you expect?
Yeah, it does make it higher. Yeah. I do know I'm prone to it going up a bit when I'm pregnant, but I think, when I get worked up about it, of course it goes up more.
Yeah, but that's amazing. It sounds like you had a very good midwife, but also a midwife, like many, many, many private midwives, that treat you as an individual and look at your 100%. Individual circumstances. And the fact that she was doing meditation with you, that's amazing.
That was the best thing. Yeah, she'd like she'd talk it like it was a written one that she'd talk through, and her voice was so calming, and so she was a godsend really, because there was some part of Isaac's head, because I was still doing the scans, and I don't think I would have engaged in any growth scans if he hadn't had that nuchal translucency thing. I think I was still wanting to see him to kind of go, like, is there something? Because if he did have some sort of chromosomal or genetic thing, like, then it might be a case of he's not well at birth, you know?
Yeah.
So I think I did. I wanted the scan, but at the same time, scans made me just feel like I was going to die. I was so worried.
Yeah.
So there was a part of his head that was measuring smaller, but it's a part that didn't really matter because it's not the circumference, it's the other bit.
Okay.
But I would always question, why is that so small? And they're like, oh, that's fine. Like, don't worry about that. That can be discounted at this stage. That's just the shape of his head kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was quite worked up about that stuff, and it was good to talk to Hayley and Eleanor, and they talked me down off that sort of thing, saying, he's fine. They're telling you he's fine. Like, you know.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of mental challenges.
Yeah.
And towards the end, I actually did a lot of kinesiology.
Okay.
And that actually helped. I think that really helped me achieve the home birth.
Yeah. Did you?
Because I think deep down I believed that it was never really going to happen.
Yeah.
And she got me to actually, I don't truly understand how kinesiology works.
Yeah.
But it made me feel different. And she also got me to picture actually having the birth and holding Remy and that kind of thing, because I'd never actually, I think I had a mental block that I want this to happen, but it probably won't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's part of the problem as well within the maternity care system, is that we discount like what's actually happening in your head. It's like seen 100%. As, just a physical thing. Oh, you're just going to go in and like pop a baby out. But it's a hormone game. It's a mind game. It's so important. Did you or your husband do any like extra education or like things like that?
Not overly, because just Eleanor and Hayley were so knowledgeable. Yeah. So Eleanor, being a women's health physio, that was great, and she also does a bit of birth education as well. So cool. We did a lot of stuff like that together, talking about, positioning, and also Hayley did a lot of that. I think it's called optimal maternal positioning, and some side lying things, and going upside down on the lounge and stuff like that. I did that throughout the pregnancy.
Yeah.
So I felt that I just was surrounded by such a good team that I was just learning stuff all the time off them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. And when did you go into labour with Remy then?
So it was 39 weeks on the dot, if that was right by the dates. So, around the same time as with Isaac, so that must just be what my body does. But Hayley was very chill about this birth pool coming, because I really wanted a water birth. And she's like, oh, yeah, like, I'll bring it round next time. And then she's like, oh, I don't have it this time. And I was like really on her, like, because she's so chill, but I was like, no, I need it. I need it at my house. Like, So it was really lucky she dropped it on the Sunday, and then it was the Tuesday night that I went into labour. So I'm so glad I got that pool.
Yeah.
So I just I went to the toilet around bedtime, and there was just a little bit of blood there.
Yep.
Which didn't happen, like totally different to my last labour, how it started.
Yep.
So I looked up, I Googled, what it means. And it said that you probably go into labour in the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's strange that that's what I did rather than like texting Eleanor or Hayley, but then it just basically started straight away.
Yeah, okay, wow.
And it was so intense straight away. Like it wasn't like my early labour last time. And I was like, whoa. But then I was like, no, it could be long. I'm just going to stay in bed and tell Ben to get sleep, and I'll try and get sleep. And no, like it was just so intense. And so I said to Ben, I won't be able to stay in bed. Luckily, Isaac was asleep, but I said, I won't be able to stay in bed. I'm going to just get up and go on the birth ball and stuff. And I said, you should sleep though. But so lucky, he said, oh, no, I'm not going to sleep. I'll come out, because it was only a 4.5 hour labour.
Whoa. Oh, my gosh.
So Ben said, I'll start setting up the birth pool.
Yeah.
So he started doing that. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
That was his job. So he was on that, and I was just I was getting a lot of back labour again, as I did with Isaac. So I was like, I don't know, does that mean the baby's in the wrong position? Or I wasn't sure. But I was just, because I thought I'd go longer, I was being really casual with everything. Even though it felt intense, I was like, I'll just let Hayley and Eleanor know, but tell them not to worry. And then I was sort of talking to Eleanor, because she lived a lot closer than Hayley. So I was saying, maybe you could come now. And she's like, just have a shower. And I think, we're all being quite calm about it. But yet we didn't know there was not long to go. So it started to get feel a lot like Isaac's labour. And Ben and I had read about, I did do some reading in terms of, I read Birth is a Rite of Passage. And I read another one, Birth Skills by Juju Sundin. So in that, I had read, it said to make really low noises rather than screaming. So, Ben's like, low noise. So I was practicing going like, moo, like that. And doing banging as well. So that's what I was doing. And I also used the birth comb. And I also went upside down on the lounge, and I felt him move.
Wow.
So that was really cool. I just think, if I'd used these skills in Isaac's labour, I probably could have changed things a lot. But, I obviously knew a lot more this time. So I felt him move. Didn't change really that back. I still had that back labour for both labours. So Hayley, I think eventually Hayley said, I'm on the way. And she just sort of never came. And I remember I was in the back room of our house. It was November, so it was hot. I was by the back door, and I was just letting the breeze come in, and I was in full on intense labour. And I remember saying to my husband, where is she? She's not coming. Eventually she did ring my husband, or my phone. I don't know. Her husband must have answered it, and she had a flat tire out in the country.
No.
Yeah, and she only called when she fixed the tire herself.
What?
And that's when, so she's amazing. But just really bad luck. So she fixed the tire herself and said to Ben, I'm going to be another hour. And I was just like, I was so deep in labour, I just didn't really respond. I was just like, oh well, it's happening kind of thing. And the feeling of the birth pool had woken Isaac. So I ended up, we decided my parents would get Isaac, because I wasn't sure whether it would be the right thing to have him there. In the end, I think it would have worked out fine to have him, but at the time we thought that was the right thing. So my parents came and got Isaac, and my mum, who wasn't sure about this whole home birth thing, saw me in immense pain kneeling by the back door, and she's like, oh dear. And I said, it's all in my back again. And she could see that I was having a hard time. And then I wanted to prove that it was the right thing, so I was being really strong in front of her. And then after she left, it just didn't feel that painful anymore. It was really weird. It was like it just sort of went, I must have really got in the zone or something.
Wow.
I don't understand it, but the intensity just backed right off. And I didn't want anyone near me. So my husband was coming in, and he's like, has it stopped? And I'm like, I don't think so, but I don't want to be rude, but you can just leave me. And he's like, he was just really confused, because last time I was grabbing him and, he couldn't leave my side, whereas I was like, just go and do your thing and, like, set up the space, because I'm sure I wasn't speaking quite this rationally, but I was saying, no, I just want to be alone.
You sound very diplomatic.
Yeah, I swear I still was being diplomatic. I just am like that, but I also sure it was a lot, you know.
Yeah.
I was in the throes of labour, so it probably wasn't quite that polite. But I said, I'm not, like, it's nothing about you, just go and do the birth space. I just want to be on my own. So the only thing he was doing was giving me some water, because I wanted sips of water. And then, like, I got that feeling like the bowling ball in your bum feeling.
Okay.
Like that really heavy, like it was all in the butt. I could just feel this, like my butt was splitting open.
Yeah.
And I thought, he's like, I'm about to give birth.
Wow.
And my husband,
so the midwives are not
no
there?
one's there.
And
no
the doula, like, no one. It's just your husband.
Yeah,
you sent Isaac away.
Yeah. So I had gotten Ben to tell Eleanor to come, because I think I said call Eleanor, but then, like, I couldn't say anything.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's like, what do you want me to say? And I'm like, tell her to come.
Yeah.
So, like, Eleanor was on her way. Haley was, I guess, somewhere on her way.
Yeah.
And I could feel, like, my butt splitting open.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be in the water. That's all I wanted. So I was like, I could barely walk, but I was, like, gripping my way through the house to get to the birth pool that was at the front of the house.
Yeah.
And like, after the birth, there was, like, blood on the walls through the house from me gripping.
It's like a horror movie.
I told Ben I couldn't move, but when it came to getting in that pool, I didn't care. I was going to make it.
Yeah.
So I got in the pool, and just before I got in the pool, there was a huge gush, and waters completely broke, like big time broke, as opposed to, like, a trickle.
Yeah.
And he was right there. I knew I was just about to give birth. So I'm like, I'm getting in the pool, got in the pool. And, I'm pretty sure his head either came out when I was standing or in the pool. Like, I said to Ben, his head's out. And I just don't think he believed me.
Yeah.
Like, I think he was just completely overwhelmed. No one was there. My other birth took 30 hours.
Yeah.
And he's just like, are you sure? And then Eleanor arrived at that point.
Yeah.
And I said, his head's out. And I think she wasn't convinced on that either, but she had a look, because it was all dark in the room, with fairy lights, and she had a look with the light, I think, and she's like, oh, yeah, there's a head. So she started filming, so that's great. So I have it on film from, like, a video from then.
Yeah.
And then Haley arrived. I was saying to Eleanor, are you sure this is okay? That's when I started to get anxious, because the head had been out for, like, 5 minutes, but nothing was happening.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and for some reason it didn't hurt when his head came out. Like, I just don't understand what was going on there, because I went from being in quite intense pain to all the pain just disappearing.
Yeah.
I don't know, is it like your natural pain relief? I just don't know.
The body is, like,
just
pretty incredible.
Yeah. So the head's just sitting there, and on the video I'm saying to Eleanor, are you sure this is okay? Like, she's like, yep, just wait for your body. And then Haley arrived, and on the video you hear her say, Haley, we have a head. And then not long after Haley got there, I had a big contraction, and he was born. Wow. The disappointing thing is I was just frozen when he was born.
Okay.
I didn't. She's like, Nathalie, collect your baby. Like, your baby's here. You can lift him up. And I just wasn't. It's like I could hear nothing, could do nothing. I was just hunched over the pool.
Wow.
So there's a foot. So yeah, I wish I'd picked him up myself, but I was frozen. I don't know what it was. And I've heard apparently that can happen sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
After your birth, but I don't know. Yeah. I wanted Haley. And then Ben said just the other day, or maybe it's because in hospital they were telling you everything to do. Maybe you were waiting for someone to, because Isaac, I don't really remember him being born.
Yeah.
I
mean, it could be so many things. It kind of does sound like perhaps, maybe a trauma response like that. Yeah. Obviously this is not a trauma.
It's hard to know.
I'm so sorry to open up these can of worms. But,
no, it's fine. I've worked through all of it, so it's, I'm fine to talk about all of it. Yeah, so I just, she ended up bringing him to my chest, and, he was just so, like, I just remember him looking like, kind of like a blue colour, but it wasn't in a way that, like, he wasn't breathing or anything. He just didn't look the same colour as Isaac looked. Hello. And he was very quiet. Oh, sorry. I might have to get my husband.
That's okay. That's all
He was
right.
very quiet and very small.
Yeah.
And I just convinced that he was, like, not alive or not okay.
Wow. Yep.
So it's funny, like, I had this good labour, but then once he was here, I think all I was saying on the video was, is he okay? Are you sure? Is he okay? Are you sure? I just kept saying that, and then finally he let out a bit of a cry, and that's when I think I was convinced.
That it was, yeah. Wow. And did you stay in the pool or?
I would have loved to, but unfortunately the water, Hayley was quite concerned it was not at all warm enough for the baby.
No.
It was like, I have to get you guys to hop out pretty quickly, actually. It's not a good temperature.
Wow, yep.
Yeah, because we just kind of filled it. Hello. I'm nearly finished.
Almost done.
Yeah.
Almost.
And, so we went to the toilet to birth the placenta.
Yep.
Which isn't the nicest spot, but it worked. And
it works. Yeah.
Yeah, within a half hour, I think, of the birth, and it was fine. It just seemed like no big deal, because I remember with Isaac's birth, they just stuck the needle in my leg. Like, they didn't even ask me.
Yeah.
So I look back like, oh, why was it such a big deal to, like, get it out?
Well, I guess like the reality is that, like, birthing your placenta requires, like, oxytocin as well, and I think you know, in such situations in hospitals, especially when you've had this really intense experience, actually, there is potential for the placenta to have trouble, because you've just messed up the physiology.
Anyway.
So, I mean, they'd probably want to be jabbing that real quick, because
that's why.
But in a physiological process, just let it be. Like, it'll happen.
It just seemed like no big deal. Like, it was just quite easy, and everyone think, well, like, I know it's not the case for everyone, but that all went to plan. And then
amazing.
Then I had a shower, and that was really lovely. And then just like, I think before, I don't know if it's before the placenta was born, or it probably was after, but it's hard to say. I just remember lying on the lounge and cuddling. Maybe it was a little bit maybe she gave me a little bit of a chance to do that before, and then we did it again after. So no, I don't think so. So lying on the lounge and cuddling him, and I think Eleanor made like a cup of tea, and the sun was just coming up.
Yeah, wow.
And I forgot to mention it was the blood moon of November.
Oh, wow.
So I always call him my full moon baby. Yeah.
Wow. And was that the 10th moon, do you reckon? That would have been the 10th moon.
Oh, of the pregnancy?
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah. Yeah, because I was 39 weeks.
Yeah.
But, it was a lot of people were saying, babies might come on this full moon. And Jane Hardwick Collins did like a video saying, I'm thinking of all you women who will go into labour on the full moon. And she said, lean into the pain. And I did that.
Yeah.
I feel like that video really helped me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I went. It was the full blood moon, amazing moon.
Yeah.
And Mum said that when they were driving Isaac over to their house, he said that the moon was chasing them, because it was this giant red moon, coming on. So it was a pretty, like, auspicious night to give birth.
Auspicious, yeah. That's a good term. Yeah.
So, like, I was the sun was coming up, and then the second midwife arrived, I think, around the placenta birthing time, because that, like,
can you imagine the stress that you're on the way to somebody having a baby and you get a flat tire, and then you're like, the quickest way is going to be for me to change it, and then, like, the amount of calm I imagine you have to have fiddling around with all the things of a tire
in the dead of night in the country.
Oh my gosh, it's a miracle she got there at all.
I know. The timing all worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like an unfortunate event, but in the end, everything happened perfectly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And I'm so glad they both arrived when they did, because I didn't know, I never learnt what to do when the baby's born.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'll have a third, but if I did, I would be wanting to learn what to do. And, like, I never thought about that. I just thought about being alone in early labour and stuff, but I never thought about bringing them up, like, what if he wasn't breathing, or you know, all these things. But it all would have been fine. But I just am glad that they did come at that point.
That's amazing. Like, I feel like I've got like chills then as well.
Yeah, it was all pretty eventful and exciting, and definitely even more than I'd hoped for, I suppose.
And like comparing the two, especially like in the context of how different the birth experience was with Remy, do you have like can you give a little description, I guess, or explanation on like how that made you feel, or like how you like, I guess also like how that affected your postpartum also in comparison to Isaac?
Well, it's funny, like, obviously the birth itself, it made me feel super, super empowered, and like, I mean, there's always an element of, I've shown them, like, all these people that tried to hold me back and hold me down and tell me I was vulnerable and tell me I had diabetes and tell me it wasn't safe, and you know, you just feel like I knew all along I could do this, and look, I'd done it, and I didn't need, and it made me think.
You had
what's
a dream
that?
too. I had a dream about long grass and snakes.
She says I had a dream about long grass and snakes.
Wow, that sounds a bit freaky.
That was Mummy's dream, remember? Yeah. That's hilarious. So I felt, I did feel like, really proud of myself and proud of my husband and proud of, the team around me, and I just, it felt like, I knew that I could have had this all along, and I probably could have had this with Isaac if I'd had the right people around me. So I felt really proud and empowered, but it didn't make my postpartum easier.
Okay.
Because with Isaac, I was in hospital for 5 days. And the postpartum care there was good. It was really good. I had quite high blood pressure, like even higher than when I was pregnant. And they believed I had postpartum preeclampsia, which is a really rare thing. Because most people believe that preeclampsia goes when the placenta's gone. So that's why I'm like, what the heck? But if you Google it, which I luckily didn't look up too much about it when they thought I had it. I mean, that's what they said I had. My midwife, private midwife's a little bit unsure. She's like, maybe it's like due to some of the things that happened to you. But anyway, my blood pressure was high, like 150 on 100, and I had some unusual bloods with kidney and liver markers and stuff, and they had said that's what I have. And so I was cared for really, really well, and I learnt to breastfeed in hospital, and I just felt well supported. By the time I came home, I felt ready to be at home and that sort of thing. And this time around, it was fantastic that, you know, I'm already in my bed, and I didn't have to be in hospital, and I loved that aspect. But the unfortunate thing is that, like, my son just really found, and this is natural now I look back, and I just didn't realise that he found it really hard adjustment. And he was being quite hypo at the grandparents' house, and Mum said, maybe it's best, like, we bring him back because maybe he's feeling, like, left out and he wants to know what's going on, that kind of thing. So he came back that afternoon. And, ever since Remy was born, he just really was struggling with the adjustment and having a brother, and so some different behaviours were coming out with him that we hadn't seen before. And I was, in the end, like, my husband was doing a lot with the toddler, and then I was sort of doing everything with Remy, and we had a bit of feeding struggles. He had tongue tie, and he was spilling milk everywhere and not latching at all, like my eldest latched. So I was having feeding troubles, and then, like, dealing with all the toddler's big emotions, and I was like, this is, and then you're at home, so I guess I didn't feel very looked after because my husband was trying to look after the toddler who was acting all out of character. So I was, I found it quite challenging. Like there were some I didn't have a meal train, but there were some lovely people that I'd met through like home birth connections.
I think Mel does something with meal
she does
trains
do that now in Newcastle.
Yeah.
I don't think that was around then when I had given birth, but it was really nice that I did get some meals, so that helped a lot. But yeah, I think I felt like a lot more stressed this time around just due to those things, and also I was kind of convinced that maybe something was wrong with Remy and I didn't know about it, kind of thing. Just due to that scan. So I was it's interesting, he didn't really open his eyes for like 10 days after he was born. Like, I might have seen them open very briefly at one point in the day each day, kind of thing, but he always had his eyes shut. So I was like convinced that meant he had something wrong with him. Whereas my midwife was like, okay, it's all right, he's just waking up. Like, we're not worried about that. Like,
I guess, like, number one, postpartum is hard. And when you like have a second child, that's also pretty hard. I think
that's what was the big difference.
I like when I think about like, you know, how like things like postpartum can be improved or like felt, you know, to feel more supported. It is the things like that community. It's like the meal trains. It's like relieving a bit of pressure, because otherwise you like, like I work in mental health and we call it like the stress bucket. And like, if your stress like keeps like filling up in the bucket, like the bucket overflows, and that's like, you don't want to be postpartum with your bucket overflowing. Like, that's full on. And I think there's I've seen recently on like social media like people choosing C-sections because they have health anxieties or whatever, and like anybody, like you can choose whatever path you want to choose, but I think especially for people that have anxiety or, you know, other mental health struggles, having individualized woman-centered care is the kind of care that you need to give you the best chance at having the ability to relieve some of that, you know, water overflowing from your bucket. You know, how amazing that like the midwives were able to say, Nathalie, it's okay, don't stress, like baby's okay. Because if you birth in the hospital, I presume you don't have a midwife's number that you can just text at 2 a.m. and be like, hey, worried that my baby is doing XYZ, you know?
Yeah. Well, I was, like, of course, like Hayley's, Hayley and Eleanor, like I still had their support postpartum. So that was really good.
Yeah.
Because I remember texting Hayley a lot, like, you know, hasn't opened his eyes. And there was a day, they're meant to do certain poos on certain days. Yeah. And he just didn't poo for a couple of days or something. So there was a lot of text back and forth about this poo, and then the poo finally came, you know, all that kind of stuff. So all that, like, there was a lot of chat with Hayley and so it was good to have them.
Thank you so much, Nathalie, for sharing your stories of Isaac and Remy. I really appreciate you being so honest and open, and thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking with you.